scripture. If you have your Bibles with you, let's open it to the passage that was just read to us, and that is in the Old Testament. So, we're basically doing a series of messages about anchor of life, and that pretty much, we'll just have to take for a pause or a break, because I like to spend some time with mothers. And the Bibles are filled with passages about mothers. But there's Mary. There's also Abraham's wife, Sarah. There's so many passages about mothers. But for one reason or another, I'd like to share this particular verse because this is very close to me. Ruth is actually very close to me. I went through some struggles in my life, and I always found refuge, always found safety in the book of Ruth. So, let me just give you some background here. Naomi, her name, may not sound very familiar to some of us, unlike Sarah or Mary or Esther. But Naomi's really stand out because she was the mother-in-law of Ruth. Although she was Ruth's mother-in-law, she was able to establish such a bond with Ruth that their relationship set in motion a series of events that impacted even us today. Now, let me just, it's interesting because we will have a visual of where the picture is. We will be able to understand more quickly where I'm coming from. So basically, Elimelech and Naomi, husband and wife, they were from Bethlehem originally. But then there was some famine in the land, and they have to move out of Israel. So they have to travel away because they found out that there is this food in a town called Moab. Basically, not a town, but a place called Moab. So they, just like immigrant stories, so they moved from Israel and they migrated to Moab. And Elimelech and Naomi had two sons. And now while they were in Moab, their sons found wives, Moabite women, and Nahor, the elder of the son, married Ruth. And there's the second son, Kilion, married Orpah. So pretty much that is, in a nutshell, that is the story of Ruth. However, Elimelech died. We don't know, the Bible is not very detailed on how he died, but pretty much back in those days, either you died through sickness or you died through either through accident. It's really a tough word back then. So Elimelech died. But then 2 years after, the sons died. Mahlon died, and Kilion died also. So, in a span of 10 years, Elimelech died, Mahlon died, and Kilion died. And so what was left of the family tree? So pretty much all of the women. Naomi's already old, but Ruth and Orpah, they're still young. And that's where Ruth chapter 1 verse 8 comes in. Naomi heard that there was already food in Israel. And so she decides, you know what, I think I want to go back to my country. I want to retire there. I want to go back to where my people is. And so Naomi talked to Ruth, the daughter-in-law, and Orpah, and they said, I want to go back home. I want to go back to Israel. Ruth and Orpah, I want you to go back also to your people. That exactly is the background. it's a very, if you read the Bible, it's a very emotional event. Talo pa ho yung mga teleserye, talo pa ho yung mga Korean novela. I mean, it's very, very emotional when you really think about it. So let me just go through the first thing. Then Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness, as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." So that was Naomi's prayer, that you're still young. When you go back home, you will find another husband and you will raise your kids and you will have another family. And then she kissed them goodbye and they wept. Well, I'd like to share three things about Naomi as a Mother's Day message, but at the same time, I think it echoes to everyone. What are these traits, characters about Naomi? The first thing we would like to know about her is this, that she is a giving mother. She wanted to give Ruth and Orpah the chance to remarry and have children of their own. I mean, Naomi believed that God would bless these two women because they were so nice to her, they were so good to her, they were so faithful to her sons. One thing we have to remember about mother is that Naomi was a giving mother. She told them, "Ruth, Orpah, I'd like to thank you for being with us, being part of our family. I'd like to thank you for loving my sons. But they're all gone, and I want you to go back." One thing that really struck me about Naomi is that she's a giving mother. Mother natural tendency is, especially when your husband passed away and your sons, and these are pretty much the pillars of your independence. I mean, these are the people who provided for your safety, for your food, for your wealth, for everything, but they are already gone. So the natural tendency is for Naomi to just keep close what she had. No, that's not her. She asked her, go back to your families, go back to your home, remarry, find another husband, raise kids. Despite knowing that she will have a hard time just being alone by herself. In her old age, no families, she was willing to let go of the very precious people that she had. And that speaks a lot about Naomi. A giving mother. Naomi asked them to leave her. She blessed them, stating that her Lord would deal kindly with them and give them blessings with their new husbands. A giving mother. Wow. I think it's natural for mothers to be giving. To some extent. But if it really involves your security, your comfort, your familiar places, I think it's natural for you and not to give those away. And this is one thing we have to remember about Naomi. Only that she gives, she is also selfless. Let me go to the next passage here. This is Naomi. This is Naomi telling Orpah and Ruth, and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands?" Return. Remember, if a passage keep on repeating on the same text, it emphasizes importance. Return home, my daughters. Emphasizing you have to leave me, you have to go back. Return home, my daughters. I'm too old to have another husband. Even if I know there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord has turned against me. Okay. One thing we have to remember about this passage is this. Aside from being a giving, Naomi was also a selfless. What is selfless? It simply defines that you will think of yourself last. Last or less. Naomi was pleading with them to return to their homes so that they could rebuild their lives. Back in those days, the culture is, if your husband and wife and the husband died, whoever is left in the marriage is responsible to take care of the mother or the mother-in-law. That's pretty much their culture here. So, if a couple married, a husband and a wife, and the husband died, society dictates that the wife will support the mother-in-law in her old age. And so, let me repeat that. Naomi was pleading them to return to their homes so that they could rebuild their lives, number one, and not end up taking up the role of an elder son whose responsibility is to take care of his mother when her husband dies. This was not the life that Naomi wanted for her daughters-in-law. If you could just imagine the burden. Namatayan ka na ng asawa, you already lost a husband, and then you have another burden of taking care of your mother-in-law. Because that's what the culture is. So you already have, you've lost a husband, you already suffered emotional pain, a financial pain, relational pain, and then now you'll have another burden to take care of your mother-in-law. And that's why Naomi has to let go of her security, her safety, because she doesn't want her daughter-in-law having the burden of taking care of her. Wow, what a selfless mother. I mean, you could also say that this could be a selfless mother-in-law. Okay? Just a message to our mother-in-law. I know it's always been an issue between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Always have frictions. Always have. We'll discuss it later, but pretty much that has been a natural context. Mother-in-law, daughter-in-law. So let me just go there. So Naomi was a giving mother, a giving mother-in-law, and also a selfless mother-in-law. Now, Naomi makes her case that if she could find, Naomi was very, very smart. Look at this. Even if I could find another husband, and even if I had another son, it will take forever for them to grow up, and it will take time. She really made a strong case before her daughters-in-law, before Orpah and Ruth. Okay, so one thing I'd like you to remember, Naomi was a giving mother, or mother-in-law. Naomi was a selfless mother and a mother-in-law. Okay, so let's go to the next passage. This is my final point is verse 14. At this they wept loud. Oh, kita nyo? Umiyak na naman, no? Very emotional talaga this event. At this they went loud aloud, and then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. Pause. Let me just pause there. Take a moment and just let the verse sink in. Look, Naomi, Orpah is living and going back to her family, her country, her people, her gods. Go back with her. Verse 16. But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely. If even death separates you and me. When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. I hope you're getting the picture here. Why? Okay, one of her daughters left already and returned to her family and to her gods. However, Ruth refused to leave Naomi's side. And as a matter of fact, Ruth denounced her own family and her gods and just Naomi and her God. She confessed that she will remain with Naomi wherever Naomi goes. She will go where Naomi was buried. She will also be buried. So she might be asking the question, well, why is Ruth so attached? Why is Ruth so what is the term? Why is Ruth so connected with Naomi? Isn't it that mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws always have issues? And that's biblical. You always have issues. Now that the husband died, now she has the freedom to choose. I don't have to deal with Naomi anymore for the rest of her life. And I could go on. I could go back to my family. I could go back to my community. I could go back with my own life. And I could find freedom again. But why is it that why is it that Ruth was so connected with Naomi? The last characters I'd like to share. Okay, so Naomi was a giving mother, a selfless mother. And the third is, Naomi was a godly. In the 10 years that Ruth had been part of Naomi's family, she had learned from Naomi's faith, even during the time of sorrow and great bitterness. Imagine losing your husband in a foreign land. And that, it doesn't stop there. Imagine losing your first son. And it didn't stop there. Imagine losing your only son left. You lose your husband, you lose your son, your first son, you lose your only son in a foreign land, in your old age. But Ruth watched Naomi dealt with the death of her two sons after losing her husband. She watched as Naomi continued, get this, she watched Naomi continue to serve her God without anger or bitterness over her situation and how far her faith was not destroyed based on life's circumstances. I think that is a definition of a godly person. When despite all of the struggles you've experienced, all of the bitterness that come your way, you remain faithful to God. If you encountered, we've all experienced these losses. Loss of business, loss of a person, loss of a friend. And sometimes when we experience this, it really made a big dent on us. It dent our faith, it dent our relational outlook. It really affects us. And sometimes it also affects us of how we look upon God. And sometimes we become bitter about God. God, why did you allow such things? I have served you for 10 years. I have loved you for 10 years. And yet in those 10 years, I lost my husband, I lost my son, I lost my only son I have. I mean, is it natural for Naomi to have this bitter feelings towards God because of what she went through? But despite all of these things, she remained faithful. She remained giving. She remained selfless. Wow. Mother-in-laws terrifies their daughter-in-law. Okay? That's true. Lahat po yan. I don't know, from every single the mother-in-law always terrifies daughter-in-law. Because if you're, let me just give you a perspective, is because in some extent they are treated harshly. Because from a mother-in-law perspective, the daughter-in-law is replacing her in the eyes of her son. It used to be that the mother is the number one in your son's life, but not anymore when you get married. Now the wife becomes number one, the mother becomes number two. And then because sometimes some mothers are having a hard time adjusting to the priorities or realities of life. But not Naomi. She walked as a servant of God, and because of her faithfulness, Ruth chose Naomi's God as her own. Ruth saw in her faithfulness that she'd never seen before, and she came to believe in the God of Naomi. There was this, there was this article I was reading just recently about, first or second grader. They were taking a standard test. I don't know if it is math, not math, science, or probably science. And the question was, so this is what the question to a first or second grader. What is the thing that picks up things? That starts with an M. Okay, so this was the standard. I forgot the exact, but it's something like that. What is it that pick up things? What is it that pick up things that start with a letter M? And you know what the little kids answer? Mother. The right answer is magnet. But 68% of the little kids answer mother. Because they saw their mom always picking up things. That's how we make impressions to our daughters, to our sons, is by our actions. Mothers, there will come a time that you have to let go. I repeat, there will come a time that you have to let go of your kids. There is a season where you have to give up your importance with them. Mother will always be mother to our kids. Fathers will always be a father to our kids. But there will come a time that the priorities will be different. And mothers, do not be so bitter, or do not be so sad when priorities change. I see that a lot of the conflict in families are not recognizing the priorities. I love mother. I love my mother. But there will come a time that my love for my mother will come second to my love for my wife. And that's sabi nga nila, Pastor, mapapalitan mo yung asawa, pero hindi yung nanay. Kaya kailangan, nanay muna. Wow. Wow. Something is wrong in that picture if you have that. we're not replacing mothers because a mother will always be a mother. We're not even thinking of replacing her. What I'm trying to say is priorities. When you're married, your priority is to your husband, not kids. Husband. And that's where all these relational problems start. And when you love your kids more than your husband. Church, we have to know, and to the mothers, wag ko tayo maging sumamalo. Now we become second place to our married kids. Because that's the reality. And that's what God wants. Remember the first wedding? You will leave your mother and father, and you will cling to your wife or husband. That is the most biblical way of handling relationship. You leave your parents and you cling to your spouse. Is it hard? Yeah, it is hard. Mahirap po talaga. But it's workable. You just have to learn where your priorities are. So church, I just would like to sum this up. In closing, Naomi was a giving mother. She was not focused on her comfort. She was not focused on the familiarities and everything. Naomi was a selfless mother. Because by law, by culture, the daughter-in-law should be taking care of her in her old age. But she refuses that. She wanted her daughter-in-law to have a new family, raise up kids, have wonderful lives, instead of the burden of taking care of. And the third is, she was a godly mother. A godly mother. And this was displayed both to Orpah and to Ruth. And you might be asking, Pastor, bakit ganun? Why did Orpah left and then Ruth stayed? Oh yeah, that's someone will answer that. Okay. Only question. Okay, why? Okay. Because to make the story short, God has a plan for Ruth. Okay, that's pretty much the short answer. Okay, so let me just go back to. So what happened then? Okay, so remember the originals, Elimelech and Naomi, husband and wife. Elimelech died, and their sons died, and so Naomi and Ruth went back to Israel. And I want to have, it is a wonderful story. If you have time, read Ruth, the book of Ruth. Anyway, so what happened was, Ruth met Boaz. Wow. Pangalan pa lang, ha? Artistahin na eh, no? Boaz. So anyway, so Ruth met Boaz and they fall in love. And they get married, they had family, and they had a son, and his name was Obed. Wow. So many years, a generation follows. Obed also had a family, get married, and kids. Obed had a son, and his son is named Jesse. Wow. Jesse. So, well, fast forward, next generation, Jesse met his wife, they had a family, and Jesse had many sons, but one of his sons he named David. Who was this David? He eventually become King David. The most powerful, the most favorable king of Israel. Sometimes things happen. Oh, I don't want to use this cliche. Things happen for a reason. But the real truth is, things happen because it's in accordance with God's perfect plan. You're not here by accident. You're not here by coincidence. I refuse to believe that. You are here because in God's wonderful plan, God put you into this place where you are exactly here right now at this very moment to hear this message for a purpose. Be giving. Be selfless. Be God. And all God's people says. Oh, dear Heavenly Father,